Drugged by the heavy sedative, Rebecca had quietly mixed into his morning meal. David had slipped into unconsciousness without the slightest suspicion. The 38-year-old physician could never have imagined that the woman he married was plotting something far more sinister than Greta planned to eliminate his father for money, power, and reasons even darker than he knew. "You want to know what's wrong with people like you?" Rebecca sneered, pressing harder on the boat's throttle as Walter kicked against the waves, struggling to keep his head above water. "You actually believe you're entitled to the same privileges as us. My daughter will never inherit the stained wealth of a family like yours." What Rebecca failed to realize was that Walter Thompson was far more than a 70-foot black man fighting for his life in the cold ocean. He was the mastermind behind Thompson Industries, one of the largest tech corporations on the East Coast, a visionary who had turned $200 million into a thriving empire with nothing but intelligence and persistence. And for the past 6 months, ever since uncovering his daughter-in-law's true intentions, Walter had been preparing a countermove so devastating it would crush Rebecca and every person helping her behind the scenes. Just 3 hours before this moment, Rebecca had served David a special cup of coffee, waited for him to collapse, and then sweetly persuaded her father-in-law to join her for a romantic anniversary stroll aboard the yacht. Walter had accepted with a gentle smile she interpreted as gullibility, but which was actually the controlled expression of a man who had calculated every detail long before stepping on the deck. "David will never forgive you for this," Walter said, cutting through the water with the powerful strokes of someone who had spent decades swimming daily. "David won't know anything," Rebecca replied with a chilling laugh. "When he wakes up, you'll have accidentally fallen overboard, and I'll be the heartbroken daughter-in-law who tried desperately to save you. The fortune will belong to us exactly as it should have." Walter closed his eyes, briefly not from fatigue, but from concentration. In the small waterproof pocket of his jacket, the emergency beacon he had activated before boarding continued to send out live location signals. Rebecca believed she was committing the perfect crime. She had no idea that hidden within the yacht's walls were 3 miniature cameras secretly installed by Walter earlier in the week, capturing her every move. "You know," Rebecca Walter called out, his voice echoing with a fierce authority she had never heard from him before. "There's a difference between being intelligent and simply convincing yourself you are." A flicker of hesitation crossed her face. Something in his tone, steady, powerful, unexpectedly calm, made a cold shiver prick her skin. But it was too late. Her plan was already unfolding, and she imagined herself only hours away from becoming one of the wealthiest women in California. What Sadine Tino was that every racist insult, every threat, every second of her attempted murder was being automatically recorded, uploaded, and forwarded to a contact list Walter had programmed in advance, one that included the police, the FBI, major national newspapers, and every board member of David's company. If you're enjoying this tale of justice served against racism and greed, make sure to subscribe, because what comes next proves that underestimating a man as brilliance simply because of his skin color was the deadliest mistake Rebecca ever made. Half a year before this horrifying day on the water, Walter had stumbled upon evidence by pure accident. During Christmas dinner, Rebecca had left her phone on the dining table. When it boosted, Walter instinctively picked it up to hand it to her, and the illuminated screen revealed a group chat titled, "Problem solved. I finally convinced David to sign the power of attorney. The old man won't last much longer, and once he dies, that filthy money will be ours rightfully," read one of Rebecca's messages. The contact saved as lawyer Kay replied, "Are you sure he has no idea?" Rebecca responded, "Please, he's just another old black man who got lucky in business. David still buys into that happy family fantasy. My daughter should never carry the blood of those people." Walter had quietly taken screenshots of everything before placing the phone back exactly where she left it. Years of navigating an America that often rejected entrepreneurs who looked like him had taught him how to conceal emotion behind a calm, neutral mask. Over the following months, he watched Rebecca accelerate her scheme. She started meddling with David's medical choices, hinting that Walter's mind was deteriorating and he needed more supervision. She persuaded David to limit his father's time with his 5-year-old grandson, claiming cultural confusion. "It's not about your father," she would say, tears perfectly staged. "It's just that Tommy is asking strange questions about skin color. And at school, well, other parents are starting to talk." What crushed Walter wasn't the racism it was seeing his own son believe it. David, the proud black boy he had raised to honor his roots, now avoided discussing family history around his wife and even asked Walter not to mention certain parts of the past in front of Tommy. Rebecca meticulously executed her plan. She isolated Walter from family friends, pushed David to revise his will, just in case, and even suggested that Walter should move into a care facility better suited for someone his age. But Rebecca miscalculated. She underestimated the man who had built an empire from nothing. Walter Thompson wasn't merely wealthy. He was a strategist. He had survived racist sabotage attempts, corporate espionage, and aggressive takeover bids throughout his career. And now, the woman who thought she was eliminating him was walking straight into a trap of her own making. He had learned long ago that the strongest defense against people like Rebecca was meticulous documentation and relentless preparation. Over the past 3 months, Walter had quietly hired one of the most elite criminal defense firms in the nation, installed an advanced recording network inside his own home, and even brought in a private investigator to shadow Rebecca's movements. What he uncovered was far darker than anything he had anticipated. Rebecca had a disturbing Patona trail of wealthy men, abrupt inheritances, and elderly relatives whose deaths were labeled accidents, all tied to her past relationships. Now drifting in the freezing waters below as Rebecca sped the yacht farther away, Walter felt an unexpected sense of peace. Every racist remark she had spit out, every threat she had made, every second of this attempted killing was being broadcast live to a secure room filled with authorities he had alerted in advance. "Do you want to know the real difference between you and me, Rebecca?" Walter shouted, his voice echoing across the waves as she pulled away. "You believe intelligence has a skin tone. I know that stupidity wears many faces, and today, the world will finally see yours." Rebecca cackled loudly, turned up the yacht's radio to drown out any cries, and increased the volume until the speaker shook. She had no idea that, at that exact moment, her face was being transmitted to police headquarters across 3 states, and FBI teams were already mobilizing to intercept the vessel. For a brief moment when the blasting music drowned Walter's voice and the yacht shrank into a dot on the distant horizon, those watching the live feed believed they were about to witness a murder unfold. But those who understood the kind of strength forged through decades of hardship knew better. True resilience grows precisely when it appears weakest, and the harshest justice is delivered by turning the enemy's own weapon against them. 3 months earlier, after finding Rebecca's racist messages, Walter had been sitting alone in his private office at 2 in the morning when the phone rang. On the other line, Detective Michelle Santos spoke with urgency. "Mr. Thompson, we've traced her financial trail for the last 5 years." Michelle sighed, her voice steady but strained. "You were right. Rebecca Collins isn't who she pretends to be. We've found evidence of at least 2 similar cases in different states." Walter closed his eyes, feeling a mixture of horror and validation wash over him. The investigation he had launched in secret was proving that his daughter-in-law was far more dangerous than he had imagined. "Tell me everything, Detective," he said. "There's Richard Morrison, age 67, a widower from Phoenix," Michelle explained. "He died on a hiking trail not long after marrying Rebecca. She inherited $1.2 million. And before him, Harold Peterson, 59, from Seattle, a sudden heart attack right after signing a fresh life insurance policy. Rebecca received another $800,000. Walter had chosen Michelle Santos specifically because she was one of the few black detectives who had risen to the top of her department while facing the same kind of prejudice he had battled his whole life. The daughter of Mexican immigrants, she had carved her path through determination, discipline, and relentless competence qualities. Walter deeply respected Mr. Thompson. "You need to understand something," she continued. "Rebecca's patient and methodical. She studies her targets for years, gains their trust, and slowly isolates them. Your son, David, he's not just being manipulated. He's being systematically conditioned to view you as a burden." In the following months, Walter learned how thoroughly Rebecca had woven herself into their family life. She had obsessively researched Thompson Industries, memorized stories about racial discrimination so she could mimic empathy, and even studied African American culture to fake understanding. Every sympathetic conversation, every well-timed tear, Every moment of supposed vulnerability had been part of a performance perfected over years. What shattered Walter the most was watching David slowly become ashamed of his own heritage. Rebecca had planted seeds of doubt so subtly that David began rewriting his own memories, convinced he had been raised too comfortably and needed to grow up to earn his wife respect. But Walter Thompson had not built a $200 million empire by sitting still. While Rebecca believed she was constructing the perfect crime, he was designing a trap that would turn her entire plan against her. Detective Santos. I want tracking devices installed on David's yacht, Walter instructed. She is going to try something during our next family trip, I am certain of it. Mr. Thompson, that's extremely risky, Michelle warned. If she senses even a hint, she won't, Walter said calmly, cutting her off. Rebecca only sees me as an old black man who stumbled into success. She cannot fathom that I might be smarter than her. That blindness, that prejudice will destroy her. Walter had spent his life turning other people's racism into his hidden advantage. When competitors dismissed him, he negotiated deals behind their backs. When investors doubted his abilities, he quietly bought their collapsing companies years later. Rebecca was making the exact same fatal error that countless others had made before her. In the days leading up to the yacht trip, Walter discreetly installed a sophisticated surveillance network aboard the vessel, hidden cameras long distance, microphones, live streaming transmitters, and an emergency beacon capable of sending his exact coordinates to the Coast Guard with a single touch. Even more important, he had arranged for every second of footage to be sent to a secured operations room, where Detective Santos and a team of federal agents would monitor everything as it happened. Rebecca thought she was whisking her father-in-law away on a charming anniversary outing. In reality, she was steering directly into the jaws of her own downfall. Rebecca's fatal mistake, Walter explained to Michelle the night before they set sail, is believing that power and intelligence belong only to wealthy white people. She cannot imagine someone like me being 10 steps ahead. The emergency device in his pocket wasn't just a tracker, it streamed high-definition audio and video. Every racist insult, every threat, every movement toward murder would be preserved with courtroom precision. And when the moment came, it would be Rebecca's own actions that condemned her. While Rebecca spent the night before the crime obsessively reviewing what she believed was a flawless plan, Walter was putting the finishing touches on the most elaborate trap he had ever designed. For months, she had convinced herself she was outsmarting a fragile old man, never realizing that every step she took was being predicted, recorded, and carefully archived by someone who had survived far more dangerous adversaries throughout a lifetime of business warfare. What Rebecca was about to learn, within mere hours, was that dismissing Walter Thompson's intelligence because of his skin color would be the last mistake she would ever make as a free citizen. On the morning of the trip, when she handed David his sedative-laced coffee and flashed a gentle smile inviting her father-in-law on a special anniversary outing, Walter returned the smile because he knew he was moments away from turning her racist pride into the very evidence that would imprison her. The first sign that her scheme was unraveling came swiftly. As she steered the yacht farther out, a low rumble echoed across the sky. Rebecca squinted upward, raising a hand to block the sunlit and froze. 3 Coast Guard helicopters were flying in tight formation directly toward her coordinates. That's impossible, she whispered, panic rising as she shoved the throttle forward. No one knows we're out here. But before the yacht could pick up full speed, the boat's radio left on only 4 music crackled sharply, cutting through the air with authority. Rebecca Collins, this is Special Agent Rodriguez of the FBI. You are surrounded. Power down the engine and remain where you are. Her blood turned to ice. The FBI. How could the FBI know her name? Where they were. What she had done. She spun in circles, scanning the horizon for other boats, desperately searching for an explanation. Attention, Rebecca Collins, the voice repeated. We have complete recordings of your attempted murder of Walter Thompson. Shut down the engine immediately. Her stomach dropped. Recordings. Attempted murder. Someone had been watching. Someone had heard everything. And then, like a puzzle snapping into place, the terrible realization struck her. She turned toward the distant spot where she had left Walter fighting the wave's end for the first time since this began. Actual fear crawled up her spine. 2 kilometers away, Walter Thompson floated calmly, supported by a military-grade emergency buoy, that it inflated the moment he activated the device in his pocket. He wasn't drowning. He wasn't struggling. He was simply waiting to be picked up exactly as planned. "Base, this is Thompson." He spoke clearly into the nearly invisible microphone attached to his waterproof necklace. "Operation Justice is underway." She took the bait completely. In the Coast Guard's control room, Detective Michelle Santos monitored 3 screens, displaying simultaneous camera feeds of Rebecca's every move. The hidden cameras Walter had planted on the yacht captured it all the moment she drugged David. The hateful racist slurs she hurled at Walter, and, most critically, her own confession about killing other men in the past. "Oh my God," one of the technicians whispered. Horrified, she actually admitted she's done this before, and it's all on video. What Rebecca could never have imagined was that in the last 10 minutes, while she believed she had committed the perfect crime, every second of footage had been streamed live not only to the FBI but to multiple news networks across 3 states. On Dijate, she was unraveling. She grabbed her phone, fumbling to call her attorney. Straight to voicemail. She tried calling the accomplices who had helped her in her previous crimes. Every number was disconnected. Rebecca had no idea that Walter had spent months tracking not just her movements but her entire support network. Detective Santos and federal teams had coordinated synchronized raids in 3 states, dismantling her operation before she even stepped foot on the yacht. "Mrs. Collins," the FBI voice boomed again, "we are currently broadcasting your actions live to your family and associates through your own social media accounts. Your Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter profiles are streaming your crime in real time." Rebecca staggered into the yacht's cabin and unlocked her phone with shaking hands. Her Instagram account, normally filled with carefully curated images of her perfect marriage and flawless suburban life, was now hosting a live broadcast of her attempting to kill Walter Thompson. Over 50,000 viewers were watching, and the comments were savage. "What kind of monster does this? She tried to kill her father-in-law. Racist psychopath. Call the police now." Her breath came in sharp gasps as she switched to Facebook. The same live stream. Except now, she recognized the names David's colleagues, neighbors, parents from Tommy's school all watching, all judging. Her perfect reputation, crafted over years of manipulation and lies, was being obliterated in real time. Meanwhile, at the hospital, David, still sedated, had just woken up as the live broadcast began. Dr. Harrison, the department head, stood beside him holding a tablet. "David," he said solemnly, "you need to see this. It's about your wife and your father." David stared in horror as the woman he believed he knew revealed herself to be a hateful, cold-blooded predator. Every insult she hurled at Walter, every racist remark, every threat had played out in front of him and the entire world. "This isn't real," David whispered, tears spilling down his cheeks. "She can't be like this. I've lived with her for 5 years." Out on the ocean, the Coast Guard helicopters finally forced Rebecca to cut the engine. Agents boarded swiftly. She was sitting on the cabin floor, her face ghost white, eyes locked on her phone as hundreds of furious comments continued pouring in. "Rebecca Collins," Agent Rodriguez declared, "you are under arrest for the murders of Richard Morrison and Harold Peterson, and for the attempted murder of Walter Thompson. You can't prove anything," she burst out, suddenly snapping back to life, her voice shaking with rage and desperation. Rebecca's voice trembled as she shouted, "He slipped. It was an accident." But the agent only narrowed his eyes and lifted a tablet toward her face. His tone was ice. "Mrs. Collins, we have 2 full hours of video where you describe down to the smallest detail how you murdered 2 men in the past, how you drugged your husband this morning, and how you intended to kill a 74-year-old man for money, and because of your own racism. Also, just so you know, over 200,000 people are watching the live stream right now, and not a single one buys your story." As the handcuffs clicked around her wrists, miles away, Walter's rescue was almost complete. A Coast Guard helicopter hovered above the waves, lowering a rope as paramedics checked him carefully. His vital signs were stable, better than expected for a man who'd spent a lifetime swimming 5 kilometers a day without missing a beat. "Mr. Thompson," one paramedic said, placing a thermal blanket around his shoulders, "you may have swallowed some seawater. How are you feeling? Walter chuckled softly, tightening the blanket. I feel great, son. Better than I have in months. Now that my family's safe, I can finally breathe again. In the Operations Control Center, Detective Santos's phone buzzed. It was the FBI director, calling from Washington. Santos, the director said. What in the world did you just pull off? Every major news station in the country is calling. That live stream is everywhere. Santos replied, steady and focused. Sir, we just unraveled a murder scheme that's been operating for 5 years. Walter Thompson didn't just give us Rebecca Collins. He gave us evidence strong enough to reopen suspicious deaths across multiple states. As the helicopter carried Walter toward the mainland, he gazed back toward the yacht where Rebecca was being taken into custody. He felt no hatred, no burning desire for payback, only the calm satisfaction of a man who had defended his family using the same skills that had built his legacy: foresight, patience, and the ability to turn another person's prejudice into the very trap that destroyed them. At the hospital, David was surrounded by colleagues who had seen the live stream from start to finish. 5-year-old Tommy was safe with David's grandparents, shielded from the nightmare that his own mother had attempted to kill the grandfather he adored. Dr. Fuster, a nurse said gently, your father just arrived by helicopter. He's safe. He only needs monitoring. David sprinted to the helipad, arriving just as Walter stepped out of the aircraft. His father looked tired but unbroken calm even. David wrapped Walter in a desperate embrace. Dad, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I never imagined. Walter pressed a hand to his back. I know, son. I never blamed you. What matters is you know the truth now. And from today on, we can finally be a real family again. While father and son held on to each other, Rebecca was being transported in a prison van, shackled and wearing an orange jumpsuit. Through the reinforced window, she could already see digital billboards flashing headlines about her downfall. Racist serial killer arrested, live. FBI takes down multi-state murder network. Her phone, confiscated minutes earlier, had automatically sent a final message to every contact she had, a link to the live broadcast of her own confession. One last parting gift from Walter, ensuring that everyone she knew would witness the truth she had spent years hiding. Sitting alone in her holding cell later that night, Rebecca finally realized the depth of her destruction. Not only would she face trial for multiple homicides and attempted murder, but she had been publicly exposed in real time to hundreds of thousands of viewers. Her face, once associated with high society events and carefully edited smiles, now appeared beside headlines about racism, greed, and serial killing. She had never imagined that Walter had engineered everything, not just her downfall, but her complete social annihilation. The people she tried hardest to impress, the circles she desperately wanted to fit into, they now knew exactly who she truly was. The future she tried to build on the suffering of innocent men collapsed in a single afternoon on the open sea, streamed live for the entire world. And in the silence of her cell, no schemes left to spin, no victims left to manipulate, Collins finally admitted to herself that she had gravely miscalculated the strength and intelligence of the man she believed she could eliminate because he was an elderly black man. It was a mistake that ended her freedom forever. 1 year later, Walter Thompson sat on the porch of his newly renovated home, watching little Tommy run through the garden while David prepared a Sunday barbecue. The 6-year-old darted across the yard with pure joy, free from the poisonous lies Rebecca once tried to plant in his young mind. "Grandpa!" Tommy yelled, scrambling onto Walter's lap. "Tell me again how you swam with the sharks." David appeared with a tray of cold lemonade, shaking his head with a smile. "Dad, I still can't believe you planned all of that." Rebecca really thought you were just some frail old man she could fool. Walter chuckled, stroking Tommy's hair. "She only saw my age and the color of my skin. She never cared to learn who I really was. And that was the mistake that ruined her." Rebecca Collins was ultimately sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Her trial, broadcast nationwide, turned her into a chilling reminder of the racial hatred still buried in America. The evidence Walter collected was so overwhelming that even the sharpest attorneys in the country couldn't craft a believable defense. The sting operation she accidentally triggered led to long-closed cases being reopened cases, involving elderly victims with large estates. Detective Santos earned a promotion to department chief for dismantling the entire criminal network. At the hospital, David became a leader in a groundbreaking program designed to detect elder abuse using investigative techniques. He learned by watching his own father navigate danger with brilliance. His lectures helped protect countless families from predators who operated in shadows. As Tommy eventually dozed on Walter's lap, Walter turned to David and asked with a quiet smile, "Do you know what the best part of the whole journey was, son?" "The best part was that you survived?" David asked quietly. Walter shook his head with a gentle smile. "No, son, the best part was watching you discover your own strength. Rebecca spent years trying to make you feel embarrassed about being my child. But now you finally see that our family, our history is our power, not something to hide." In the months that followed, Thompson Industries donated nearly $50 million to organizations dedicated to fighting racism. They launched new educational programs that used Walter's experience as proof that brilliance, resilience, and character are not defined by skin color. His story became a blueprint for young people learning to stand tall in a world that still judged them unfairly. Meanwhile, Rebecca remained in her solitary cell, where she received a daily flood of hate mail from viewers who had watched her confession unfold live across the country. Her attempt to murder a man solely out of greed and racial hatred had transformed into a nationwide warning about the consequences of prejudice. During Walter's final appearance in court, he paused on his way out, turned, and looked Rebecca directly in the eyes. His voice was calm, steady, not angry. "You tried to kill me because you believed I was just an irrelevant old black man," he said. "But now the whole world knows exactly who you are, and exactly who I am." Those words stayed with her long after he walked away. Rebecca Collins' legacy would forever be tied to cruelty, racism, and manipulation, while Walter's name became synonymous with intelligence, justice, and the power to turn discrimination into victory. That evening, as the sun slowly dipped behind the house, where laughter echoed through the rooms, Walter realized something profound. The greatest revenge was never Rebecca's downfall. It was the life he had rebuilt, the stronger family he now had, and the society a little more aware of how dangerous people like Rebecca could be. And if this story of justice overcoming hatred touched you, make sure to subscribe for more stories that remind us that intelligence outshines prejudice every time, and that sometimes karma just needs a helping hand from those who know how to design the perfect plan.